Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the game room. So today's video is unscripted and from the heart, and it's not so much a cautionary tale, but it's a story of realization and appreciation for what you have and don't have. So as collectors, you eventually reach a point in your life where you realize that you're going down one of two paths. Path A is you're a focus collector. You're basically collecting what you know you love, what you want to have, all good. The other path is you're an everything person. The person that wants to have every game on every platform with every platform. I definitely was the latter. At one point in my life, I was literally thinking I was going to have every game system with every game for it. No variants at that point. And I reached a point in my life, which will actually be part of the eventual 50th episode video, that I didn't need everything. And like I knew right then and there that I had to sell off things if I was going to lighten the burden that the collection was starting to feel like. And I basically at that time sat down and really truthfully, heartfeltly figured out what my fanboy systems were. And once I had that template, once I had that set, like these are the ones I can never get rid of, like I know I will treasure these for the rest of my life, everything else was sold off. And in reminiscing about that time when I sold off everything, which actually came in two waves, looking back, it is so refreshing. Like you feel like a burden is lifted off of you, especially like if you're like me and you really do want to play every game you own, be it for a website or just for personal experience. Knowing how much I let go and now don't have to play through or check out is just an incredible feeling. And in the last few days, I've been thinking about all the systems and the games I've sold off, and not egotistically speaking, strictly truthfully from the heart speaking, I know I have sold off more systems and games in the last 12 years than most people will buy in their entire lifetime. And that's a terrifying admission, technically, of guilt. So in thinking about that these last few days, I actually sat down and wanted to share the 5 systems and or libraries that I have sold off that I don't regret selling them off, but these are the ones where if I had the chance, I wouldn't mind playing them again, but there's no way I'm buying them again. Like I'll be fine with an emulator. So that being said, here are the top 5 systems and or libraries that I sold off that I don't really miss. At number 5, it's the 3DO. The 3DO was probably one of my favorite collecting eras because it's tied to a moment in my life that I will always cherish, and that was working for Game Shark and Interact Accessories. When we moved into the new building, to us at least, one of the first things I did to celebrate my awesome job and my awesome living by myself in a different state was that I wanted to buy a game system and games and really start getting into the collecting because hey, what else was there to do? And I will never forget buying this eBay auction on eBay that I had shipped to GameShark.com because I didn't want it to sit on my apartment's front step and possibly be stolen. And it was a 3DO auction, and this is all true. It was an FZ1, the original tray Panasonic system, with 22 games that I bought for $300 shipped. That's how no one cared about 3DO at the time. This was. And is seeing the mail person walk in with this giant box and just sit it down at my cubicle and seeing everybody else going, what's in the box? It was just awesome. And I basically opened up right then and there and like showed people blah, blah, blah. And it was like the quintessential 3DO collection, like all boxes, all system boxes. It had Need for Speed, Samurai Showdown, Gex, Off-World Interceptor, a whole bunch of good stuff. And as I played the system, whenever I got the chance, I realized that looking back now, I don't think I spent $300 worth of time on that system or the games. Like I can specifically remember playing Samurai Showdown and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Way of the Warrior one day at the apartment And then like I literally can't think of any other time I played that system. And in looking back, the actual true exclusives like Jurassic Park and Way of the Warrior, while they may have had their charm, especially Way of the Warrior, like I realized like I'm really glad I sold it off. Like there was nothing there worth hanging on to. Even the niche games like Blade Force and like Plumbers Don't Wear Ties and all that goofy stuff. And of the games that it did have, I can easily play on the PlayStation or Saturn because so many of them were ported over. Even when the system released their fake Turbo Duo model, I think it's the FC10, even that couldn't bring me back to it, which in a way is kind of sad. Like I said, I do miss Way of the Warrior, but like I really don't miss that system at all, even though it was such a cherished purchase to me at the time. Number 4 is the 32X. Now, the 32X is near and dear to me because I didn't latch onto it until it was already in the clearance bin. I bought my system and I think 3 games from a Toys R Us for like a total of $50, all brand new. And at the time, the most expensive game was Spider-Man, and at the time of that going for the full set, I think Spider-Man was maybe $200 tops, like if that. And I had my complete collection, and one day I was messing around with Mortal Kombat. I loved Mortal Kombat in the 32X, even though the Super Nintendo version was more faithful visually. The 6-button Genesis controller worked so well with that game, and the 32X version of MK2 just flowed so well gameplay-wise that I could look past all the graphical issues and so forth. But after like playing through Colibri and not being able to finish Star Wars on the 32X because it's freaking impossible, one day I was just like, I'm never going to play any of these games. And what was super heartbreaking was that my full set of 32X, the day I sold off the system in the last game, I went to delete stuff from my Excel file I had at the time, and I realized I had never had a full set. Somehow, somewhere, I missed Pitfall. And that just like broke my heart twice because I'd been living a lie the entire time. A funny anecdote about the 32X. At the time I had it and was super into it, I was using a CDX that I bought, the little portable Genesis. Now, if you've never seen a 32X and a CDX together, you can't put the 32X in the CDX because the 32X has heat plates on the cartridge slot that would basically melt the plastic on the CDX, and then you can't open the actual lid of the CDX. So what I did was I bought a cartridge converter that was supposed to be used for playing import cartridges on the Genesis, put that in the CDX, then put the 32X on top of that, and then to hold the 32X in place so it wouldn't hobble, I had audio cassette tape cases behind it so it could sit on it and be stable. And if you weren't sure of how old I was, saying the term "a stack of audio cassettes" now lets you know how freaking old I am. The third system I'm not really depressed about selling off. I kept the system, but I sold off most of the games, and that was for the Super Nintendo. Now, the Super Nintendo at the time, especially when it was released, that was my Neo Geo. Like, having grown up with the Nintendo and the Atari 2600, when I got my Super Nintendo for Christmas, and when you're so used to, say, Mario Brothers 3 and, bowling on the Atari 2600, when you played Final Fantasy 2 and Super Ghouls and Ghosts and Super Mario for the first time, it is this and was this mind-blowing experience. Like, you could not believe how good the graphics were and just the Mode 7 effects. Like, to this day, the opening of Final Fantasy 3, i.e. 6, opening with the mechs and the snow is like just ingrained into my brain. Like, it was just an amazing experience. And with the system being so rich in Japanese RPGs and brawlers, which were at the time my favorite arcade game next to one-on-one fighting games, it was like this absolute just paradise. But like the 3DO, I began to realize as I was getting closer and closer to a full cartridge-only set that there were so many games I was never going to play. Practically anything sports-wise was off the board. A couple of the RPGs that were like the first-person corridor weirdo things like Draken, I was never going to touch. And I realized that if I wasn't going to play any of that, I'd rather have the money back to put towards other stuff. And while I kept this system, I whittled down what is at the time probably 500 Super Nintendo games, if not a little less. I whittled that down to about 10. And that's Ninja Turtles in Time, UN Squadron, I think Super Mario World, if not All Stars, and a couple others, probably like Modern Man or something for Mrs. Game-Rave. And to put that in perspective, even though I kept all those games knowing I would fully replay them, I haven't pulled the system out from its storage box from that sell-off point in years. In fact, I think it's in the closet in the hallway. Like that's how little I've played that. And while I'd still keep it around for nostalgia's sake, it's something I can just easily emulate. And if there was a game I missed that I wanted to play, it can just be done through emulation. What's funny about Nintendo games across the systems is that Nintendo keeps re-releasing the same 10 or 12 greatest hits, if you will, for every generation on. And there's no real sense of nostalgia for me past the original NES because of just how often Nintendo keeps re-releasing the same games. I can access it anytime I want. It's really weird. The second library that I sold off that I don't miss, and this is going to sound crazy, is the PlayStation 2. Now, in full disclosure, the PS2 was the last-ditch effort for my I'm going to buy everything gene to have a stab at it. And I was still working at EB Games / GameStop at the time, so my discount came into play when buying things. So if for our dollar bin, if there were a bunch of complete in-box games we were selling for $1 or $2, I'd come home with 15 or 20 of them, replace the DVD cases, call it a day. And this was already after the big sell-off. This was my one last hurrah for a full set and so forth. And as stupid as it sounds, the breaking point for me on PlayStation 2 was I had just bought a whole bunch of the bin games, got them all cleaned up, new cases, blah, blah, blah. And I went to start filing them away, and I realized in a stack of about 20, I had 10 hockey games. I had 10 simulation hockey games that under no circumstance was I ever, ever, ever going to play at all. None whatsoever. And I stopped and I just went, you're an idiot. And literally that day went on eBay and just started setting up lots. And I whittled 400 games down to about, I think, 20 or 25. Might be a little bit more. I let Mrs. Game-Rave have at my collection first so she could pull any RPG she wanted. And then once that was done, I just sold off pretty much everything. Oddly enough, though, as a footnote to that, when I sold off my original Xbox and that entire collection, I actually did rebuy games that I would have kept on the Xbox but sold off everything. I ended up rebuying on the PlayStation 2. So despite losing a couple of things in Burnout 2, I rebought the Burnout collection on PS2 just because I didn't have my Xbox One anymore. And the few games I kept for backwards compatibility on my 360, I hadn't touched them in forever, so I just sold them off. I think right now the only Xbox original games I have left, I think, are just the Halos, because I have a full Halo set up until 4, but even that's looking like it's going to go on the chopping block because I just haven't played it in forever, and there's no need to keep them around. Aside from ODST and Reach, oh my god, ODST is amazing. The number one system and all of the games sold off for me, and I know this is going to hurt a lot of people out there, was the Nintendo 64. And I think at the time I was about halfway through the full set library, boxes and everything. I had StarCraft. I had 3 copies of Bowling on the Nintendo 64, not because I knew it was going to be a collectible at the time, but because it was $9 brand new, and I bought all 3 of them from some random GameStop somewhere because I was going to try and trade them off to get Ogre Battle 64 and some other stuff, which Ogre Battle 64 at the time was $10 at all the GameStops brand new. And despite the N64 having some pretty cool niche games. Like a Beetle Adventure Racing is probably like one of my all-time favorite games on there that most people don't know about unless it became a hidden gem video. But like I realized one day, like the N64 was going to be part of my permanent collection. And then one day when I was starting to sell off some of the sports games and everything, I decided to go through and play everything. And I just couldn't do it. Like, as good as Mario 64 is, it's available everywhere. As decent of a game as Killer Instinct Gold was, with its broken perspective and everything, the PC version of the new Killer Instinct is far superior, and I had no qualms selling that off. And while it was a bittersweet day to see it all off and use the money to go buy more PlayStation stuff, the N64 to this day, I don't, like, I lived through it. Like, I sold it, I played it, I reviewed games for it when I was at Game Shark, and I don't know if it's because I was, like, in my early 20s at that point, so it wasn't really, like, a childhood memory, but it wasn't like a critical review. Like, I hadn't reached the age of, like, observation and appreciation yet. I was in my mid-20s, I was like your typical jackass gamer, highly opinionated, but respectful. And I don't get the nostalgia of the N64. Like, it might be because it just wasn't part of my childhood. Like, I hate Mario Kart 64. Like, Mario 64 itself is fine, but like, I feel like it's the first game to like tear apart what you would think was the world of Mario. And like, it was almost like Nintendo didn't care about consistency throughout the games after that. And that's, I mean, there's other things for a later time, but like, it's just weird. Like, for being the main rival to the PlayStation, especially after the Saturn dropped out, not feeling a need to own the N64 and even like compare ports. Side tangent, the MK Trilogy version on N64 is the worst MK Trilogy game ever, period. No argument. There is appreciation and love for the system, but like, the fact that I didn't feel the need to hang on to it kind of makes me sad. And I don't think I'd ever rebuy one just because the analog sticks are crap on the deck. And, you know, like I said, any game I'd want to play mostly would just be like Mario 64. I can just play on any emulator or, you know, Switch or what have you. But yeah. So that was the 5 systems and libraries I sold off that I don't really regret. Like, out of all of them, if I had to like choose one to go back and start buying again, it might technically have been the 3DO. Like, even though there's better games on the PlayStation 2 and, you know, the 32X is a smaller, easier access library, for some reason the 3DO just had a charm to it that hasn't really been replicated yet. That's not, it was almost like the 32-bit version of the Turbo Duo / TurboGrafx 16. It didn't have a lot of brand name games on it, but the ones that you got access to, they were nifty. They were quirky. All right, guys. With that, this video is over. Head down in the comment section below. Let me know what systems you have sold off that you regret or don't regret. Any personal games you wish you could buy back but are now too expensive. Let me know. Be safe, you guys. Wear your masks. I will see you next episode. Take care. Have a good one.